This is a 6-week speaking and listening class, trying to develop students' communicative ability. The students in this class are ranging from college students in Michigan State University to newly immigrants in Great Lansing area. The level of the class is intermediate high. The topic of this lesson is culture shock. This is the second half of a 2-hour lesson.
Okay, so I have been in the United States for almost 2 years. And if people ask me, how do I feel when I first came here? Or if you ask me to think of a word that can describe what is my state of mind at that time, I will have one word. So this is shock. Yeah, so when I first came here, I was in shock, completely shocked. I know my name.
Firstly, I used my own story to elicit the topic culture shock. It can get students to think about their own experience of culture shock. I also want students to know that this is a common experience and will happen to everybody, so they don't need to be worried or feel shamed.
I realized that this shock is called culture shock because I was in a new environment, so I was experiencing this culture shock. What is culture shock? Here's a sentence: when in Rome, do as Romans do. So do you know what's the meaning of this sentence?
When introducing the definition of culture shock, I used a commonly known idiom to provide students a context. It is usually hard for students to understand a term by only reading the definition. So providing context, expounding the definition, and giving examples are very important.
So you will feel very confused, you will feel very lost, and all these feelings are called culture shock. And it is because you are in a new environment, right? So, for example, you are studying abroad, and you move to a new country, or even you traveling somewhere in just a very short trip, but still you can experience this culture shock, right? Okay, so before we talking more about the culture shock, let's do a very simple vocabulary activity.
The words introduced here will be mentioned later when talking about the symptoms of culture shock. Learning the vocabulary firstly will make sure students understand the content of the class. This is also a good way to provide more exposures of target words for students during one class. Learning the vocabulary explicitly will draw students' attention to the form and meaning, and results in deeper processing of word knowledge.
So I listed the definitions for those bolded words here, and then you need to read through the definition. If you don't know the word, you need to read through the definition first, and then try to fill in the blanks by using the right word. Okay? So I will pass you this handout, and you can work on your own, or you can work with a partner to finish this.
During the activity, I was circling around to answer students' questions and check the pace. It also allows me to see what are some common problems that I need to address later in front of the class. During the vocabulary activity, students are also asked to work with a partner to discuss and interpret the target words together. The interaction and the negotiation of meaning here facilitates the development of word knowledge.
Okay, so I think most of you have finished most of the parts. So we will go through together and talk about some maybe confusing items. So first one, which word fits in the first sentence? Frustrate, right? Frustrate. Yeah. So as frustrate here, is it only frustrate? Frustrates him, right? So it frustrates him to miss so many games because of injuries. Frustrate is to cause someone feel angry or disappointed, right? Okay, so number 2, he has been feeling a lot of what? Anxiety. Yeah, so we came across this word before in the how to deal with stress lesson, right? So anxiety. So anxiety is the fear or nervous about something, right? And it also has an adjective form, is anxious. So you can say I'm anxious about something, right? So I'm anxious about the final exam. Anxious. Anxiety is a noun. And number 3, the rainy weather recently depresses me a lot, right? So here are the 4 vocabularies.
After reviewing the answers of the worksheet, more about how to use some of the words are addressed.
So these 4 words or phrases, we can use it as in a same or similar structure, right? So we can put someone or something that is caused this feeling in front of the word, and then we can use the person who is feeling this, who is experiencing this feeling after that, right? So for example, you can say the rainy weather recently depresses me a lot, right? So before this word, it is the thing that caused this feeling, and after the word is the people, the person who feel this, or who experience this feeling, right? Okay. So now I want to ask you, can I change these 2 things? Can I put the things cause this feeling after the word, and put the people who experience this feeling in front of the word? Can I do that?
Passive voice and how to make a passive sentence is briefly discussed here. I believe teaching grammar should be associated with meaning and content, because this will make the rules more meaningful to students, as well as facilitate more natural production of the grammar structure.
So culture shock is actually a very personal experience. People will feel differently when they are experiencing culture shock. But these are some common feelings people say about culture shock. And so I want to ask you, what causes culture shock actually? What causes culture shock? Why you will feel culture shock?
The way the relationship between people.
Yeah, right. You can't build up a relationship with people, right? Yes. And anything else? You may.
Language problems.
What?
Language problems.
Language problems. Yeah. Still, you don't know the language, so you may experience extreme culture shock, right? But here they use interest.
We talked about something which are commonly unfamiliar to foreigners in the United States. Since things like transportation, grocery shopping, and the measurement system are highly related to daily life, some common feelings were aroused and the students seemed very interested. After discussing these examples together, students were ready to share more of their experience and thoughts in the next speaking activity.
There is no number on the coin.
That's right. And what confused me is there's no number. So I think maybe the United States is the only country which doesn't have number on the coins. Right. Okay. So what I want you to do right now is I want you to maybe group into 2 people. So actually, I want to put you into a group of 3 people, but now I just want to save time and pair up you. So I will pass you the handout first. Okay, so what you want to do firstly is you want to take a look at the questions on the right, and then you want to write down some notes under the about yourself column, right? You want to think about your own culture shock experience, and then after you finish writing down something about you, you can talk with your partner and ask what is his or her cultural experience, culture shock experience.
Before the speaking activity, some words students just learned in the vocabulary activity were revealed, such as frustrate or anxiety. Students are encouraged to refer to the worksheet and to use those words during the activity. Students were quite interested in this activity and had a lot to share with each other. Due to the time limit, I had to cut them off. After discussing with their partners, we came back as a class and had several people presenting their partner's culture shock experience. I was glad to see that students were able to generate a great amount of new words and to use them correctly.